calling this meeting of the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency to order. Roll call, please. Oh, I forgot one thing. Nick McKellar will be running a few minutes late. Should be here pretty quick. Go ahead.
Matt Conan.
Present.
Bruce Johnson. Here. Bill Conley.
Here.
Todd Kimmelshoe. Here. Bo Shepard. Here. Mark Boomgarden.
Here.
Wade Kirchner.
Here.
Charlie Hoppin. Here. Al Montna. Lakvir Gog. Yes. Mike Morris.
Here.
Chris Schmidl.
Here.
Thank you.
Wade Christopher will lead us in a salute to our flag. Thank you. Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Public comment. Members of the public will be allowed to address the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency Board of Directors on items of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Any member with the audience who may wish to bring the matter before the board and has not placed an agenda card may do so at this time. However, state law prohibits that no action may be taken on any non-appearing item posted on the agenda. So, is there any public comment? And none online? Okay, no. Moving forward. Item 1, budget hearing approval of the final amended budget.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to quickly introduce this item, and then I'm going to turn it over to Seth. So today we're going to conduct a public hearing, and before the board for approval is the final amended budget for years 2021 through 2026. So this is a two-phase process. This is the second phase. So last month, Seth provided a very extensive overview of the budget. And then we gave the board a month to review and ask questions. And today we're here to present the final amended budget for approval. As you'll see during Seth's presentation, we've accounted for a lot of numerous grants that we've recently been successful on. So we've incorporated those into our budget. And so Seth will get into those details. So Seth, I want to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. So I'll just jump right into the budget summary. As Michael mentioned, the budget covers 2021 through to 2025. And so we're including, for basis of comparison, 2021 actuals as part of the budget summary. This way it aligns at least at one end of the budget process. So we're adding fiscal years 2024, 25, and 25, 26 to our budget planning platform. At the back of the budget exhibit, there's detailed cash flows for all of the programs. And so essentially what we're doing is we're preparing that cash flow, slicing it into years, and then asking the board to approve the budget for 23-24, as well as looking at the out years for planning purposes. Revenues come from our assessment district, multiple grants from DWR, CDFW, the Wildlife Conservation Board, California Natural Resources Agency, and I'm sure I'm leaving some out as well. And then fund balances carry over from the prior year. So again, you know, the previously approved 2021 through 2024 budget, it amends those existing budgets that have been previously approved to address project costs and cash flow timing. Refined, it also adds more detail to the budget accounts and the clarity within each program for each type of expenditure. Incorporate new programs and adds the 2 years, as I mentioned. So this is just a high-level budget summary. So the current approved budget had $54.5 million of revenues. That's increasing to $78.3 million of revenues, primarily due to the increases in additional years. But I have some slight additional detail on the revenues, and the expenditures are being increased from $36.5 million to $45.2. Primarily the rolling forward of expenses from 21-22 and an addition of new projects. And then the debt service is increasing from 16.3 to 27.2 solely because of the additional 2 years of the expanded budget timeframe. So this provides our a summary of the current approved expenditures as compared to the final amended 21-26. So that increase from 36 to 45 million, you can see, is primarily as a result of additional funding for the Oroville Wildlife Area, and that's as a result of receiving additional grants to advance work there. Agency operations is increasing due to time frame. The EIP UFR project, the additional expenses are the rolling forward of expenses from the prior years, as well as additional closeout work. And generally, not a whole lot else has changed. The regional flood management planning was reduced in budgeted expenditures because we had previously thought we would have a higher additional fifth phase of grant and higher grants on that, so that got reduced a little bit. But you can see the change in the budget detail here as well. And then on the revenues, same type of comparison. Additional revenues resulting from assessments, additional Prop 1 and Prop 68 funding. Some of that includes additional funding for Oroville Wildlife Area. The regional planning grants, as I mentioned, the revenues were reduced. And then additional funding for Oroville Wildlife Area. We did not receive one of the grants we had previously budgeted for the sediment removal project, and so that's been removed. And you can see the rest of the minor changes in the revenue details there. So for future projects, we do list some implementation projects in the budget. They're not in the budget details in terms of the sheets, but we've listed 3 additional projects in the budget transmittal. To basically establishing those programs. We indicate in the budget transmittal that the programs listed are part of our capital improvement program. So sediment removal, we're continuing to seek additional funding from CDFW. The Sutter Bypass critical repairs. The actual construction implementation of that is listed. That's 45 million estimated. And then construction and implementation of the Tudor flood risk reduction project, another 18 million is listed in the budget as well. If we are able to obtain a funding source for those projects, we would bring those projects as an addendum to the budget when we sign that grant and issue contracts for the implementation. But those projects are listed as part of our capital improvement program. So our recommendation is to conduct a public hearing and receive public comments and approve the attached budget resolution adopting the final amended 21-26 budget. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. This is the second presentation, so I can always go back and look at some of the details that we went through at the prior presentation if needed.
Thank you, Seth. We're going to open the public hearing now on the amended budget. And let the record reflect that Nick McKelly showed up at 1:06. Is there any public comment? Seeing none. Closing the public hearing. Then the board will discuss any questions for Seth from the board. Yeah.
Michael, what's the rest of the sediment removal? Where's that going to be, or have you planned that out yet?
Yeah, that's part of the project that we've already got permitted. It's right at the confluence of the Yuba and the Feather. It's basically that island that's just south.
What you did and do more, or you have to go back over there?
No, we would start new and really remove that island that's essentially at the confluence there. That's what's included in our permits, and our permits are good through 2026.
And that's a significantly larger number of, what is it, a 250,000 cubic yards or something?
I believe right around there, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a lot bigger project. Okay. Yes, Todd.
Okay. I've got a question for Seth. I've been on this board for almost 4 years, and I should know the answer to this. But I just wondered, this is a very extensive financial situation for this organization. It's hard for a guy like me to understand everything. So what I'm asking you is, how often are we audited? How often are our financials audited? And are we required to be audited?
We're required to, and we complete an audit every year.
Every year?
Every year.
Our financials are audited, okay.
And when was the last time,
present-
Jeff?
We typically present the audit sometime in January. But, there's multiple reasons why we're required to be audited. It's in our JPA. But in addition, we have a continuing disclosure obligation associated with our outstanding bonds, which requires that we disclose our financial statements to the public. So that gets attached as well. So we get audited every year. We've actually already started the fiscal year 22-23 audit. And even though the fiscal year is not over yet, and started the entrance interview. We had that a week or two ago.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago.
A couple of weeks ago, and then it'll get completed by the end of December, and we typically transmit it to the board in either January or February, and then it gets attached to our continuing disclosure in March.
So, one more question. Is the audit done by a state agency or is it a private agency that does this?
We piggyback off of the city's audit because they're our fiduciary, so the same audit firm, it just makes it more efficient for everybody. For them, they do a competitive selection each year, or not each year, each time they have a new audit firm. They typically enter into a 3 or 5 year contract with an extension. And so they're on their second or third extension with Badawi and Associates. But we just leverage that resource there because otherwise it would be more expensive for everybody.
Great, thank you for that.
Thank you. You answered my question. You got there, Todd.
Thanks, Matt.
We had a finding.
So any other questions for Zeth? Seeing none? Thank you. So now we need a motion to approve that.
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion and a second. We want to do a roll call on this one? Or,
We don't need to, we're not on
I don't think we,
anymore.
let's just do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Okay, now we'll move on to consent calendar. The consent calendar groups together items which are considered non-controversial, which may have, or which prior policy direction had been given to the staff and that require only routine action by the board. The chair will advise the audience that the matter may be adopted by one total motion. However, the board may, as option or upon the request of a member of the public, consider any matter separately.
I'd like to consider item number 4 separately, please, Matt.
So you want to make a motion to approve items 2 through 7 minus 4. Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Lockyer? We're going to pick it up afterwards. Okay, so was yours a second? Okay, so Lockyer seconded, Charlie first. We'll do this one by voice vote. Items 2 through 7 minus 4. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed unanimously. Okay, item number 4. Approval letter to request management of floodplain. Charlie, you want to address this?
I will. This letter's been reviewed by our council and from our Levy District 1's council. I believe it Levy District 9's council as well. And since the letter was written, I think the letter's a good idea and I hope you all sign on to it. But things have happened since this letter was put into print. And I'm speaking as an individual on this. I'm going to recommend and agendize it at our next Levy District 1 board meeting that we quit screwing around with the rest of the river bottoms and all the filth down there and take care of the 30 feet on each side of the levee that we're responsible for. The city hasn't done much. They helped us haul blocks around. The county the sheriff's department has got one deputy that has been very helpful to us. And because of his help, we've gone well past our 30 feet, cleaning up stuff with our backhoe and loading it and going through all that. He's going to rotate off. And Al and I met with Sheriff Barnes, and he explained the reason for that rotation. And I have to agree that it sets a precedent if he doesn't take him off. But they don't have anybody else appointed, and I don't think they're going to do anything. So if all of you in the city and county are happy with the river bottoms the way it is, it's all yours. We're going to take care of 30 feet on either side of the levee. When somebody's camped there and building a hut or digging into the levee, I'm going to have our employees pin the location, and we're going to call somebody at the sheriff's department until somebody shows up. They can do their abatement notice, and we'll clean up that 30 feet. But the rest of that crap is for all of you. Al met with Steve Smith after we met with Brandon Barnes, 3 weeks ago? And we heard about how much bulletproof vests cost and how much cars cost and all this. It's a 1 day a week job, and the guy they've got is good at it, but they're going to pull him off, and there's no apparent error to his job, and I'm tired of it. So we're going to take care of our 30 feet. You guys can have the rest of it. Steve Smith was going to talk to his community services gal right after Al left the office, and as of yesterday, he hadn't talked to anybody. So I don't think anybody has any intention to it, and if you guys all want somebody to crap on the river bottoms and take all their stolen stuff down there and shoot up drugs and shoot each other, it's all yours. We're going to take care of our 30 feet, and you're on your own. But that's just my opinion, but I have a feeling that our board next month will approve a resolution to that fact. So.
Through the chair. We've had some discussions with the sheriff, and I think that I'm going to assume, without violating the Brown Act, that we all agree that we need somebody to replace Officer Lacone in that position, and I think that we will do that. We've luckily, because we've given a raise, we've stabilized the amount of officers there and actually brought in some new cadets. Just was last week, Matt, or 2 weeks ago, and so we will encourage him to find somebody to take up that position.
We spent, I don't know, $300,000 or $400,000, Drew, on concrete blocks. More than that. And there's an ulterior motive there. Obviously, we keep people from climbing up the face, the levee, but it keeps people out of the river bottoms. And so we've done that as our expense. We had a hired security guard that I think was taking crack pipes down to the people in the river bottom because he certainly didn't ever arrest anybody. And I'm just fed up with it. So I hope they get somebody. We're not trying to shirk our responsibility. I think we've been doing more than we needed to try and cooperate because Andre is a great guy. But I'm just tired of hearing about how much bulletproof vest costs and this and that and enough beds to keep them and all that. And we're just worried about 30 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, to reinforce what Charlie said, we did meet with the sheriff. I met with Steve Smith. And, the sheriff said it cost him $300-something thousand just to put a deputy out there. And then $140,000 a year, and suggested that maybe we could try to find funds. We've been hiring a private firm, but that's only a couple thousand a month, something like that. And I told him we'd gladly work with that. Well, he said, I need $300,000, and he said maybe through grants or something we could do something, but. Our guys are down there going out and picking that stuff up, which isn't our responsibility. And these people some of them are dangerous. And if you go out in that river in a striper boat and drive down that river, you're embarrassed. Our community looks like that. I asked the sheriff and I asked Steve if they'd ever been in a boat, go out there and look. It's these thousands of people coming here to striper fish. That's what represents our community. None of us want our community to look like that. None of us at this table, I'm sure. So hopefully the city and the county, we get the law enforcement to keep those people. It's dangerous down there too. And the county, as the letter says, and city have a responsibility through code to keep that floodplain clean.
Right.
And that's what Charlie's talking about. But our 30 feet in that levee and that 30 feet on our side is what we'd prefer to take care of and leave the law enforcement and everything up to the folks that have those jurisdictions.
Through the chair, I think, and Wade and Mark, you guys could weigh in on this, but I think that's part of some of the intergovernmental meetings, right? We're going to try to figure out if we can maybe share some expenses on some of that. But, clearly, I think from a board perspective for Sutter County, we certainly don't want the sheriff to completely abandon that position. And so hopefully Andre could be the guy who, helps and trains them for a new position there. So.
Well, he said he was looking, he had somebody maybe that could fill it, but clearly, what's his name, was going.
Andre was going.
Andre was going, and maybe there's somebody that could take that job. Andre did a great job. And he said maybe there's a way he could work him back into it. And I don't know we don't know what that means.
His concern was that they've got a statute that says no one can be in any position longer than 4 years, and Andre's exceeded that. And the rationale he had, I have to agree with. He said if somebody was on boat patrol, they want to stay there for the rest of their life, and he says we have to have a mandatory reason to get them off. So, we understood that when they do an abatement, and then we send our backhoe down there because Neil Hayes too busy doing something else.
2 jobs.
Huh?
He does 2 jobs now. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if either one of them are, but we send Drew down there, and people start banging on the windows of his pickup, and screaming at him. I mean, that's past what I'm comfortable with. Somebody's going to get hurt, and I love Drew. I don't want anything to happen to him.
Through the chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So thank you for those comments, and I feel your pain. I ride those levees daily. I was out there a couple hours ago, and I know exactly what you gentlemen are talking about. So I feel your pain. This is not going to be a fix, but it might be an idea to get you to where you want to be, where you have less trash down there in that area, and that is the city meets monthly with Say Love, and they basically come and say, okay, where do you want us to go? Where do you want us to go? Now, this is, again, it's not a solution to the over addressing problem, but it might clean up some of those areas that you're talking about. And it's essentially it's free labor. I hate to say that, but it's free labor, and it's people that want to go out there and make our community better. What I'll tell you is they're really good. If you take pictures of an area and you put the coordinates on it, and you send it to them, they're really good at going out there and cleaning that stuff up. Now, I'm not suggesting we send them to places that it's dangerous. What you're talking about, that's a completely different issue. The other part of that is a lot of these areas where you're talking about levees, they're gated, and for a reason. And so if to your point, if you can isolate areas that are accessible on a certain date and time and meet with the representatives like we do, they're pretty good at cleaning these areas up as an idea.
I realize my comments are a bit myopic because not solving the total problem, and I don't know how you solve the total problem, but our responsibility is the levy and public safety, and that's what I want to concentrate on, because trying to concentrate on everything isn't getting us anywhere at all. So I'm going to draw in and take care of what I need to take care of, and hopefully coordinate with whatever takes care of the rest of it.
Through the chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Al.
Let Al go first.
And Wade, you need to know that, we have a fence that runs all the way down behind B Street.
Right.
All the way down. And we're looking now at another fence because they just cut it and go right through our fence. And we put it up there for the homeowners protection. Now we're looking at a solid fence, but they'll figure out some way to get a cutting torch or, electric grinder and go right through that one too. That's what we're fighting. And if you do send Salem down there, you may want to send an officer with them. Because it's dangerous.
Thank you, Al.
Through the chair. Hey, Andrew, if you don't mind, can I ask Andrew a question? We have the California Conservation Crew that's been down there periodically cleaning up. Are they impacting an area that you guys represent? I don't know geographically where they go, but I do know we just got that grant reinstated, and we will have cleanup crews. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll pass that on to Diana.
The county hasn't been your backhoe and your people. Once the abatement's done, that have been picking this stuff up, the county's nowhere to be seen. Correct.
I do understand that they are scheduled to be there this Thursday, tomorrow. We'll be there to support them publicly for the last time.
If this room is bugged, I bet they'll be there tomorrow.
I think that there's more than just Andre's job of interacting with the homeless, but I think he's done such a fantastic job because since Andre's been doing it, we really haven't had any legal problems either. And I think we're missing that boat, but I've expressed my opinion till I'm blue in the face. And
Through the chair.
yeah, go ahead.
My experience, and I've been on the ad hoc for a lot of the homeless stuff. The law enforcement has their hands tied. They can only do so much.
Right.
With the headache homeless people we're talking about, and the can just keeps on getting kicked down the road. So that I think is what Charlie's touching on is. Yeah. But
Well, thank you everyone
that's
for your.
a whole different ballgame than this.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. So I think we need a motion to approve item 4, correct?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed unanimously. Okay, item number 8, presentation and discussion modified Sbfca medical insurance plan.
All right, Sbfca's legal counsel, Andrea Clark, is going to present this item.
Good afternoon. Is this on? So I'm going to start with a bit of an overview and then pass it over to Seth for some detail, and then he'll pass it back to me for sort of a reiteration of what exactly the motion is, because it can, this topic can feel a little bit in the weeds. So what we're talking about is the medical insurance coverage that this agency provides to its employees. There are 2 of them. Employees, that is. And the current coverage is that that the agency covers premiums in a flat amount of money per month. And if the premiums, whether individual or family, exceed that, then the employee pays out of pocket for that, because there's just a maximum dollar amount that the agency pays per month. And through the budget planning process, we've become aware that one employee, the executive director, is compared to when he first started in this role, is now, because of increases in premiums over the year and over the years, and that flat amount hasn't increased, is now paying out of pocket something like $650 per month, more than what he was paying when he started, and so at the time he was hired. And so we put a little bit of thought, Seth and I, we talked with the agency's insurance broker. We put a little thought into how the agency could remedy this situation in a way that allows for the agency and the employee, for example, to maybe split the costs, the increases of premiums over the years, instead of it being entirely on the employee. And so what we've come up with is a proposal that the agency adjust its share and adjust how it does this starting next April, because there's only once a year that this can be changed, and it's April. And there are 3 pieces to this. And so the first piece is that the recommendation that we actually adjust how we cover premium costs, and Seth will go into the detail on that. The second piece is an amendment to the executive director's contract, because the executive director's contract literally references that dollar amount per month. And so it feels more appropriate to not have a specific dollar amount be referenced, but rather just for that contract to reference the existence of an insurance plan that he can tap into and take that detail out. So that is the second recommendation. And the third is a recommendation for the board's consideration that you increase the executive director's compensation by that $652 per month between now and when the plan is modified in April. So that would be 9 or so months to compensate for this overage in payment that we've gotten to. So those are the 3 pieces: the change in the insurance, how we cover insurance, the amendment to the contract, and the increase in compensation for about a 9-month period. So with that overview, I'm going to ask Seth to go into some detail on that first piece, what the program looks like now and what the proposal is to change next April.
Thank you, Andrea. So yeah, just to address the current health insurance plan that we have today relative to what we're proposing that it be based on, I'm basically translating the recommendation from our insurance broker. Currently, we cover $1,500 a month, $18,000 a year in insurance benefit, and that's been the case since the executive director was the current executive became employee of the agency, and we started up our insurance program around that. As Andrea mentioned, as premiums increase for the current plan that he is signed up for, 100% of that increase is coming out of pocket. What we would recommend is trying to pick a level of coverage that as the premiums increase, there's some cost sharing between the employer and the employee as those premiums increase. The typical way this is done, right now our insurance platform that we obtain insurance is called a company called CalChoice. The main benefit of going with CalChoice is they have a whole network of insurance providers that can provide health insurance coverage. That's advantageous for us because we have fairly, between our two employees, fairly disparate zip codes that they live in. And so there's an option, multiple options for plan providers, allowing them to access insurance through one program, and nobody's out of network or anything like that. So the recommendation is to pick a plan that's sort of a middle-of-the-road plan. There's multiple metal tiers that you might be familiar with, bronze, silver, gold, platinum. We would pick a gold plan, the current plan that the executive director is on, as that base, and agree to cover 100% of the employee's premium and 85% of their dependents' premiums. That would be equivalent to the percentage of coverage that the executive director had when he first signed up for the plan 5 years ago. That was about the ratio of coverage for, in terms of benefit, that $1,500 a month was covering 100% of the employee and 85% of the dependents. By benchmarking it to that type of approach, as the premiums increase, essentially the benefit would increase, but any increase on the dependent side on the dependent premium would be cost shared between the executive director or any employee for that matter and the agency. And this way we're not having to go back in each year in April to say, well, how much more do we want to provide in premiums? That's our recommendation at this point in time is to pick, essentially it's the Western Health Advantage Gold HMO Medical Insurance Plan C. That would be our base plan. We would cover 100% of the employee's premium for that plan and 85% of the dependents. If the employee wanted to pick a higher plan or a platinum metal plan or a different plan that was more expensive premium, that would be on them. That would be like our benefit would be benchmarked against that premium, and any other plan you picked that was more expensive, the employee would have to pay for it. If the employee wanted to pick a plan that was cheaper, they would have a higher percentage of their premiums covered by the agency. So that's essentially the approach, and effectively we would revisit this in April when the plan premium rates come out. We'll make sure that it's still a reasonable plan. And based on this action today, if it's a reasonable plan, we'd go forward and enter into a contract for another year's worth of service. That would take place sometime in March. There'd be a 30-day open enrollment period where the employees would be able to evaluate what the premiums are, what the employer's share of those premiums would be. They would sign up, and then we'd be in that plan for another year.
Yes.
If I could be allowed to use the Biden plan and plagiarize the explanation that both Andrea and Seth have given, I would move that we augment the insurance as presented, but I'm not going to go through every word, or I'll delete certain portions.
Sure.
Allow me to plagiarize you and you.
Okay, is there any other questions before we move on? Seeing none, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion, a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Motion passed unanimously. Okay. So Andrea, you have the language that we need, right?
Yeah, and my assumption is that the motion essentially parrots what the recommendation was in the staff report, those 3 points.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Authorization of executive director service agreement with the city of Oroville to provide assistance with management of city flood risk reduction efforts on a call to task order basis.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have Chris Fritz present this item, but just to present it, to open it up a little bit. So we've been talking about this agency assisting the city of Oroville for quite some time now, or at least for the past 3 or 4 months. So we've been engaged with city staff to figure out a plan or a path forward whereby this agency could assist the city in understanding what their levy deficiencies are and coming up with a plan to repair those levies. Also identify funding sources to go after, such as grants through the state, to fund that program. So Chris is going to present the details, but just so the board is aware, we're not talking about utilizing any Sbfca agency funding for this program. This will be 100% cost shared by the city of Oroville and/or through grants that we're successfully able to achieve on the city's behalf. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Fritz.
Go ahead, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Hello, members of the board. Good to see you all again. So as we've previously talked about, and as Michael has mentioned, this is related to the levy that the city of Oroville has responsibility for, which does provide protection to its residents. The levy is, just as a reminder, and I'm sure as you all know, located just upstream of Highway 70 and runs for about a mile right there along the Feather River adjacent to the downtown area. In 1997, there were deficiencies observed, such as boils within that levee. In 2014-ish, the city received a grant from DWR to conduct an initial study and investigation on the condition of that levee, and that study essentially concluded that there are deficiencies and that it does not meet current standards. Since that time, there really hasn't been much done to advance any repairs or improvements. And recently, based, I think, largely on the work that our agency has done, the expertise that we have, and the success that we've had in implementing levee improvement projects, we've been requested to provide assistance. In response to that, we have coordinated with city staff and have drafted the proposed services agreement that we have on the agenda for you today for review and recommended approval. Within that services agreement, we've identified really 2 key areas where we feel our agency could provide assistance. One of them is related to assisting the city with management of its flood program. So these tasks consist of items such as helping the city prioritize flood risk reduction projects, assisting them with strategic and financial planning to advance those projects, and helping to identify, pursue, and hopefully secure other additional outside funding sources from state or federal agencies. The second key area we've identified in the agreement relates to project management and implementation. So if the city, for example, is successful in obtaining additional funding, our agency could, if requested, come and assist with overseeing and helping the city manage that work, sort of in a kind of an extension of staff type role, where the other contractors and specialized consultants that would be needed would still be contracted directly through the city. the agreement that we have on the agenda today doesn't obligate this agency to any specific tasks or commitments with your action today. This is more or less establishing the framework for how the city and this agency would work together. So the agreement identifies how future additional work will be carried out under specific task orders on an individual task order basis. So the task orders will have a specific scope and budget, and this agency would track and account for any costs associated with that work and then invoice the city for reimbursement. Next steps, if the board were to approve the action, we'll notify the city. They are working to queue this same item up for discussion with their city council, hopefully at a future council meeting this month. After approval there, we would then work with them to develop and basically fine tune the details associated with that first task order, which then we would bring back to the board. So this action is essentially the first step in establishing that process for how this agency could potentially provide assistance. And maybe with that, Michael, I'll turn it maybe back over to you to just see if you want to add anything or if
No, that was excellent, Chris. Thank you. No, that sums it very well. I think we just turn it back to the chair and see if there's questions from the board. Yeah, no, that's a very good concern, and thank you for stating that, Charlie. Just like any other grant that we work under, when it's 100% grant funded, we track our time and materials and we invoice 100% for those costs. So that's how it always works within our program, and that's how this one would work also. So I'm very comfortable.
We weren't chartered to go into Sutter bypass either. I want to point that out right away. And the other thing is this is a needed public safety issue. This levee does not have a core in it. It was built with mules and Fresnos, widened by dredging. And it's actually the first time I had cooperation in 18 years with the city mayor and council and their staff to do anything like this. And yeah, of course, we're not going to, they're making them pay with their own grants. I just want to make that clear. We're not going to make this agency pay. And I really appreciate everybody's support. And it also ties into lowering the levee into the wildlife area. It's very mutually beneficial to all of us because it will have a place for surge flood through operations. Believe it or not, they can flood us with their operations. And they have, with this climate change, there's a greater chance every year that they will. So if we lower the levee into the wildlife area in 2 locations, that surge will be away from Oroville and benefit Oroville, and it'll be away from everybody downstream. And that ties into mapping of proper evacuation routes when that's put into place, which we're working on too. So I look for your support and cooperation.
Thank you, Bill and Charlie. Todd? Todd wants to have
Yeah,
address.
I want to thank this organization for even considering this. This was brought up at the Lake Oroville Citizens Advisory Committee, and I really believe that the work, this is going to sound really corny, but I believe that the work of this organization saves lives, okay? And we are, as far as I'm concerned, the preeminent levy expert, at least in Northern California and probably all of California.
Between the after band, Yuba City.
Yeah. You stole my thunder, Bill, thanks. But anyway, I want to just thank this group. I know it's out of our charter, but this is something that's needed. That levy is a piece of crap, basically, and it needs some work. And if anything was to ever happen, that lives could be lost in Oroville. And so I appreciate the fact that Michael was willing to do this, and Chris put your time in to put this together. And I think it's a great partnership. So I urge you to approve this. Thanks.
I'll go ahead, Alan, then I'll say something.
Also, Mr. Chairman, we spent what, 400 million yet from Nicholas to Oroville?
Yeah, right around there, yeah.
And I went through the 55 flood. I'm probably the only one here that did. Bill's good.
I was too.
I was
living in Marysville, Yuba City, but I would not know.
I was 10. I remember it vividly. But if we're going to keep this community safe, let's keep it all safe.
Yep.
I know we have a charter, but let's start up at that dam and take it all the way around the buttes and keep all our communities safe and take them one at a time, and we're getting there. And I as Bill's comment, the bypass wasn't in our charter either, but let's fix them all. We got the
Through the chair.
resources, we have the political ability to do it, we have the economic ability to do it. Let's just keep marching, or we can all sleep at night when that river gets to the top of that levee again. It will.
Yep.
Like to make a motion.
Oh, yeah. One last comment. I'd like to just make one comment. I think that this, like Todd said, this agency is very well qualified to do this. If we weren't to help them, I don't know who would. And I don't think there's anybody else really that has the expertise and knowledge or the ability to do the job other than this agency. And I think, I want our neighbors to the north to be safe just like we want to be safe. And I think we all work together, we accomplish many things together. So I'll take a motion.
There's one legal comment, please.
Just briefly, the multiple mentions to out of our charter, just want to be clear that we did review the JPA agreement, and we're comfortable that despite our very tight drawing of our boundaries, that the Sbfca is lawfully able to execute this agreement. So
Yeah, we already
just want that for the record.
We went in a bypass. One last thing, unbeknownst to the city of Oroville, they're within 4 or 5 years of being mapped into a floodplain. So it's really necessary for them for economic. You gonna make the motion?
He's trying. He's trying.
Get it over with.
I'll make the motion to move forward on this.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Let go of my leg now.
You're messing with that.
Motion and a second. We'll do an oral vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Good. Bill and I thank our brethren to the south.
All ends up in Bingville. Very supportive.
Okay. Next item. Let me get back here. Okay. So that would be presentation of monthly financials report. Zeth?
Yeah, let's do this. All right. So this is your regular monthly financial report, about 28.5 million, which is slightly updated from the report just to reflect most recent transactions. So that's where we're sitting from a net position perspective. We've got 754,000 of operating revenues. So that's essentially an extra $4,005 in interest that's been apportioned to that fund. And then the capital revenue is about 15.4 million to date. The difference in the total difference between the 300,000 through April 30th for the operating funds and 12.9 million through April 30th and to date reflects everything that's summarized. And this is pretty cool. I just learned this in this area on the slide. How cool is that? That is fancy on here. So essentially, 2.9 million total in difference in revenues. And that's broken up between assessments, the 2 million of assessments, and another 930 in pending payments. So essentially what we have in assessments between Butte and Sutter County to date is this 2 million, and then down here, the pending payment's 900,000, and that's what comes up with our total pending revenue difference. So you can kind of see. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a digital laser pointer. I thought that was cool. Anyway, all right. So working capital to date. Yeah, I do. She's listening right now. Siri is listening. So our expenditures to date about 5.1 million. This is the spread. Not a lot of changes since the prior month in terms of expenditures. 3.4 million primarily on the OWA portion of the project. Primarily construction from last construction season. That's where most of our expenses are expended in the beginning of the fiscal year. Our next debt service is 3.8 million due in October. We made our April payment back in February, and so that's the next debt service coming up. In terms of items that we're working on from a financial perspective, working through the closeout of multiple grant agreements. Essentially, we extended the deadline of the UFR agreement to be able to get everything closed out. The state is the biggest aspect of that work is right-of-way transfer and acceptance by the Central Valley Board. And then in terms of our other grants for the OWA project, processing those reimbursements, that extra 900,000 is part of that, and then close out on those. The agency is continuing to support the Feather River West Levee Financing Authority. That board meeting will start at 2 o'clock in about 10 minutes here. We've been coordinating and supporting them with respect to the assessment assessment levy. That'll be the next action item for Fralifa. The regional levy impact fee, we've been working through the process of coordinating with the member agencies. I think Michael will talk about that during the program project update. Our heavy lift in the last month or so has been the annual budget. And then, as I mentioned during the budget item, we've already started our fiscal year ending June 30, 2023 audit. So that's everything that's going on from a financial perspective. Happy to answer any questions on the financial report or information that's transmitted from the city of Yuba City.
Any questions for Seth? Seeing none? Thank you, Seth. We don't need a motion on this item.
Nope.
So moving on, item 11, presentation file of program project updates. Michael.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm going to give you a fairly quick update this month since this meeting is going a little bit longer than usual. So I'm going to summarize real quick on the closing out of the Feather River West Levee Project 1. We're still actively working on completing the environmental mitigation process for the Starbend and Matthews mitigation sites. Andrea and I work closely with our consultant team and the resource agencies to finalize that process. We're getting close, but we're not quite there yet. So we're still working on that process. Under cultural resources mitigation, we got some recent comments from the State Historic Preservation Office on one of our mitigation reports. So we got to make some minor modifications there to finalize that process. And we're still working with the Enterprise Rancheria on how to dispose of the cultural resources materials that one of our consultants, Far Western, in the city of Davis, are holding on to. So we need to get the tribe's direction on what to do with those materials. So we're working on that. Also closing out the right-of-way process. I've been signing a lot of real estate documents, so we're transferring properties over to the state. That process is going very well, and the state is making all payments they need to make to us and also to the title companies under that process. Under Feather River West Levee Project 2, our Tudor flood risk reduction project, that small 1.6 mile project between the Highway 99 bridge and the Sutter bypass. We're in active design and environmental documentation. We did just find out a little bit bad news. Two of our project managers, one with eCore, who's our environmental consultant, and one with AECOM, our geotech, both of those project managers are leaving those companies. So we just found that out last week. Fortunately, the majority of their work has been completed. So their staff who are going to backfill each of them at their respective companies. Chris and I will work very closely with them to finalize the process. But that was unfortunate news, but on the flip side, the project is moving forward in a very positive way. We held a public meeting on June 7th for the Sbfca document. And so that process is closed. With the Sbfca document public comment period will be closing very soon, and we'll finalize that document. We'll be taking it to the board for adoption, I think in September is what we have planned. We have a board presentation to the Central Valley Board on the 23rd of this month to move or initiate the 408 process with the Army Corps. So they will start reviewing our designs and going through that process to get the project approved. So good things happening with that project. Next slide, please. On the Sutter Bypass East Levee project, our geotech team are advancing, and our civil design team are advancing their work. The geotech team is doing some augering out there within that 5-mile project. Chris and some of the design team met with DWR last week at some of the pump stations within our project limits to better understand the state's project that they're going to be upgrading some of those pump stations, and we need to better understand how that project could influence ours. So that coordination work is ongoing. So we're advancing that project. The OWA Robinson's Riffle project, we are engaged in the planning grant process, that $1.1 million DWR funded planning exercise, or planning process, I should say. We are reaching out to all the stakeholders. We're going to be gathering input from stakeholders on what they'd like to see happen out there in the Robinson's Riffle project area. We'll be holding some workshops starting in September to advance our way towards a preferred alternative project. We're also doing a lot of hydraulic modeling to look at ways to reduce flood stage in the river and increase floodplain inundation, and also environmental restoration. So that work is ongoing. We're coordinating with DWR to amend that contract to also include floodplain inundation mapping for the city, or within the city of Orrville. So we're looking at trying to amend our contract to provide that analysis work also. Earlier this month, actually it was the end of May, the WCB Wildlife Conservation Board approved our grant for the boat ramp and campground project at the Thermalito Afterbay. So come July 1, we're able to charge to that grant, so we're advancing that design work this summer. Sediment removal, we're still looking for funding partners there, so we're actively pursuing, additional grants and analysis work through our RFMP process, which is the regional flood management planning. So that grant has been awarded to Sbfca by DWR. We've awarded contracts to our consultants to provide that analysis work. I've listed the primary focuses of Sbfca's work through the planning grant process, and that's to advance all of these projects I have listed. There is an Orrville Dam Citizens Advisory Commission meeting later this month. I'll be presenting, along with Mike Merzwa through DWR, the coordination activities that we've been doing with Supervisor Connolly on the floodplain inundation mapping.
I think they just moved it to July 7th.
Oh, did they really? Okay, excellent, thank you. So that'll happen in early July. So a lot of work going on under the RFMP process. Oh, also, just one of the other items is the Cherokee Canal corridor management plan, but we've been coordinating closely with DWR because they have a $20 million in funding for that project. So they've been actively designing how best to utilize that money to make improvements to the canal. Chris and I just attended a meeting with them a couple days ago, and they've identified a preferred alternative. Unfortunately, all of the projects are like 80, 90, $100 million because the mitigation cost is almost 1 for 1. So the amount of construction that they do, they got to mitigate almost the same amount. And and that's environmental mitigation. So they're very frustrated on the state side. We're getting more information, and we'll be communicating that to this board. But there is work going on, but I think it's going to be a process to get through to identify what is that project and how can they reduce the amount of money that doesn't get into turning dirt and removing vegetation and removing sediment rather than just going to mitigate for those activities. So that's a big issue, and we talked about advancing that issue with the political support that we have and others in the region have to really highlight that as a real problem as we move forward to trying to maintain the systems that we have with the money that we have. Next slide, please. Okay, so City of Orville, we just talked about that. Our federal project, that's been very frustrating, and I've voiced this frustration in the past. Well, the Feather Water District, the valves that were put in for the brand new piping that was installed for Feather Water District as part of that levee repair project that the Corps took the management lead on. That punch list has been going on for almost over 2 years now. And now Feather Water District just went out to try to operate those systems, and they're not operating very well. And the valves are all inoperable, or they can only open a certain amount. So it's been a real issue. So we're really raising it up with the Army Corps to get this thing completed. I think they're going to have to tear out all of the equipment that was installed that hasn't worked very well and put in new equipment. So we'll see where that ends up going, but we're on top of it, and we're working closely with Feather Water District to ensure that their needs are met. Federal crediting side, so Sbfca was successful in passing their Prop 218 election. They just found out on Monday, and Seth Wurzel had a big part of that. So that's great for that agency, but it's also very good for this agency because we're going to get back into negotiations to make a sale of our federal credit to that agency. So those negotiations will start back up probably next week or early in the next couple of weeks. So that's good news. Chris and his company are working on finalizing the FEMA package for Sutter County, the remapping package, and we're getting closer to being able to submit that to FEMA. We had been waiting on the as-built drawings from the Army Corps for their project, and they're not yet complete, but they're getting closer, and they may be able to be complete enough to at least send in to FEMA and get the process started. Regional development impact fee process is going very well. We've been having great discussions with all of our land use member agencies here. The City of Gridley approved the development impact fee on May 1st. City of Biggs has it on their calendar for July 11th. We're working closely with the City of Live Oak and Butte County and Sutter County, and also City of Yuba City. So we're hoping by the end of this calendar year that we'll be able to have concluded in a successful way getting the development impact fee approved by all of our member land use agencies. Good news, development fee credit sale to Lennar. So we had one sale to Lennar Homes earlier this year for a little over $500,000. This next one is going to be for $609,000. So very positive news. That's the development. That's the credit that we achieve by constructing or utilizing a material. We hogged out borrow material and we left behind a drainage basin, and we got credit for that through RD 784. So we're able to sell that credit to developers who need to pay into a development impact fee program under 784. So very positive news for our agency, and Tara's going to get a big check on Monday and submit that over to Yuba City. One item here I wanted to talk about, this is the last bullet I have. The El Nino is predicted for this coming winter. So I just wanted to talk about that very briefly. That doesn't mean we're going to get the same type of precipitation year we just had. It could result in normal or above normal. We don't know. It could be less than normal, but that's been in the news lately. I just wanted the board to be aware that we're on top of it. We're going to be communicating with all our state and federal partners. But going into this winter, we're under a very different condition than we were last winter because all of the reservoirs were basically empty. This year, they're going to be a lot more full. I mean, they're all topping out now. So it'll be a different situation this coming winter if we get sort of the same or close to the same type of precipitation events that we had this past year. So just wanted to raise it for awareness. I'm not, raising any red flags or anything, but just to let you know that we'll keep a close eye on it. We'll communicate as we move closer to this coming winter. Lastly is we might not have a board meeting next month. We don't have any agenda items right now that we would need the board to take action on in July. So I'm hoping that we won't have a board meeting next month, and if there's anything we get, we'll bring it in to the board in August, unless it's something very concerning or it's an issue that we have to take it to the board in a quick way. But hopefully no meeting next month. So that is it. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, see if there's any questions. I know that was a lot of information and I delivered it in a
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael? Todd?
Okay, Michael, and this is probably nothing that you can control, or maybe we'll talk about it at the Oroville Citizens Advisory Committee on the 6th, but as I open up the Chico Enterprise record, I go to the lake levels, and it says Lake Oroville is 100% full, which is great, but any idea what their plan is for, I mean, there's a lot of snow melt, obviously. I'm just wondering what their plan is. If we are going to have an El Nino, it could be really interesting.
Yeah, no, that's why I wanted to bring up this topic. I think their plan right now is to manage the lake level as close to the top as they can. So whatever input they're going to release, keep that balanced and try to keep that lake level as high as possible. But as we get closer to the winter, that's when we'll have to see, okay, where are we at? How much a flood stage is impacted as we get into the winter. So that'll be a concern later this year. So we'll talk about that as it gets closer. But that's the best answer I have right now.
They have target pool depths, I'm pretty sure, as per date. I mean, obviously, we know it's full. They're going to screw this up. They're going to have to dump. They're going to have to dump to get that thing down. And then if we get 50% of the water that we had last year, we could have more releases than this year because we're not starting at 23%. They're going to have us at some screwball number that we think is too high. So of course we want a lot of water for agriculture, but boy, I'm more worried about next year. They're going to equalize now and hold it full. I think Governor Newsom gave him an executive order to hold it up fuller for some reason. I think he's up for election or something. And just plan on a cluster F. It's pretty common. I know you guys think I'm an idiot, but this is the truth.
We know there it is.
They told me that they wouldn't overtop at the meeting here, and it did. And so they don't know. They're just, unfortunately, I think it's too high. They need to get the pool, and hopefully they'll hit their goals because they're going to have to dump like hell to get it down to, there's a lot of water in that top 80%. Lots.
Okay, so if I may, I'm fighting this battle all the time. Look, if you have, 100,000 acre feet of water and snow and it's going to come in, wouldn't you hold the pool at least halfway down to catch it? This is where they are proved idiots. Because if we got El Nino rain or something warm right now, continuously, it might be an odd storm, but we would all be in jeopardy. And that's why I'm talking about all the time when we go to Citizens Advisory, you're going to go to this new climate prediction and how you're going to operate, but you're doing it for the wrong reason. You're doing it primarily for water delivery, which we like water delivery, right? But we like safety more. And it's a continuous battle. I think they're holding the lake up to keep public sentiment down because the main people in my district love the recreation and don't know what I'm trying to express myself about. And I guess we have to be very careful, and as citizens, we let them know that our priority is public safety, and of course our farmers want their water, and then Southern California can have theirs when. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think, Bill, those are good points. I think, first of all, let's not encourage them to waste water. Somebody's been struggling to plant for 3 years. It's been pretty difficult.
Yeah.
So, but they have to get those reservoirs to 20% by a certain time for flood storage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's make sure they do that to protect these communities. And I saw a report from Stanford where they said we're going to have 10 years of wet. So wouldn't that be something? Now, that's just a report, right? Yeah. But I think we have to be diligent. We have to manage these reservoirs right. But I think there's so much water has gone out that Golden Gate that did no good for the California economy. We just have to make sure they run them as they're directed to run them, and preserve the water for our economy, but also for public safety and operate for public safety. And that's going to be a real balancing act. Because as Bill says, there's a lot of, if you fly over those Sierras, there's still a lot of snow on the east side of the Sierras. That ought to all be gone by now. There's a lot of water still coming this way.
Even Bucks Lake has a lot of snow.
Yeah, that's what I heard, yeah. Mike Monahan.
Sorry I brought that up, but.
No, it's great. It's a great question and comment.
I got Chris pretty jacked up over here, so.
Yeah. This is the reason I put this on here. It's to bring that conversation and get Chris going. So, you know. Yeah.
Any other questions for Michael? Seeing none, we're going to adjourn to closed session. Open session. Possible action.
I'd like to
Bill?
make a motion to give Michael a 5% raise.
Okay.
No, excuse me. I hadn't heard that right.
No, including his
5%.
Total.
5 in total. I'll second that motion.
Which is the coal included.
Yeah, I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
You say 500%?
Turn that hearing aid up.
Don't do it. Okay. We have a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Unless there's anything else, bring forward. Meeting adjourned.